Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities Show. This is our first single stock show. My name is Ben Maldonado. As always, I'm here with my partner, Barry Hederachi. Barry, how we doing?
Doing great, doing
You
great.
excited about the single stock show?
Getting a little nosebleed, but yeah, we can handle it. We got this.
And on today's show, it's going to be short, 10 minutes or so. We're going to talk about NVIDIA. And Barry and I were talking. We said, listen, if we're going to talk about a single stock, you might as well talk about the star of the show, the current market, the king of the hill, and that's NVIDIA. So here we are, looking at the NVIDIA monthly.
That's
Take it
right.
away, Barry. What do you think? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, just a simple question.
All
That's a,
right. We're up on stilts. Where do we go from here?
Mhm. Well, I think it's probably, it's running out of breath is what's happening. And it's getting a little hard to breathe up here. And not to get anything completely different. You guys are used to seeing us work with the squares, so I think that's probably the way to analyze this. And what I did was I marked up some prior lows. And we had one in 02, 99, and then 2012. And you can't see it because the chart's squared and we had this huge move. So if I change the square, you'll see the movements back in the day.
I love that you showed the price action without the square, and now we put the square on, and you can see the difference in perspective that you always talk about.
Exactly. See how it, see if it makes sense. So the first one, first line is low. I mean, this would be the low I would use normally because it's the low right before the, let's say,
The
the launch.
takeoff. Yep.
Yeah. And if we look at that, I mean, right away, we don't have to, I mean, that is the low. There's no
Right.
question about that. And all of a sudden, we're 135 months out and 90 degrees up in price. So
That's called a
essentially,
square.
it's called the square. Essentially what we have is a square. And run up, everything looks good. I mean, just looking at the monthly, technically, we could call this a high, and that's what we normally do because markets continue to go up and down and cycle around. So, but looking at this kind of a square where it's 135 by 90 on a monthly basis, I'm tempted to call this the high
Right.
for a while anyway. And on a monthly basis, you can see, highs only last so many months. So after the correction comes in, we tend to move higher. But here, the reason, I mean, I don't know if it's the high, but it's definitely a good high. Let's just say
It's a damn good high.
it's a good high only because we have price and time meeting right right now. Right now. It just happens to be, you can feel the sentiment, you can feel the heat, you can feel the option volumes, it's all in the news, it's all in the
And
headlines.
earnings is in 2 days or tomorrow, one day, tomorrow.
Early earnings tomorrow. So everything is hot. And you wonder why. Well, it's funny. You go back to 2012, you put the chart down and here we are. We have a big old monthly square happening. And so what does that mean? Well, it means on a monthly scale, it's we only get 12 bars for a year. So we can say, well, we had to wait for a reversal. Well, we'd had to wait a long time. And
Yeah.
price, we have to take out the monthly low, which is 616.
Hmm.
And so we could say, that could be that's certainly a confirmation on the bigger picture. But we want to see, is there a continuation? Is this still, do we have another 100 points to go? What's the story? So I wanted to look at this like a story, kind of like how we do our normal weekly show, and just talk about the movement and patterns and how they normally resolve. Right, Ben? I think that would be a good way to
Yeah. And you know what's
go about
beautiful
this.
too is you have the price marker. That 90 tells you everything, right? If we can settle above it, it's
Exactly.
gonna keep going. And if we can't,
We
the
don't.
party might be over for short term. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah,
that's
for a little
exactly where I was
while.
going to go with that.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. So what do we do normally on our weekly show? What we do is we look at the squares, and you guys can see it's not like we have these, key levels, every other week. We,
No, no.
after 12 years, what do we have? We barely got to the second square.
Right.
All right. So they're not that often. And as you can see, 45 months is no joke. So So that's why this time in price is sort of rare. You know, it's not every day you
Mhm.
get to see this kind of a square show up.
No, that's a beautiful picture.
And yeah, and just like Ben said, you know, we can use 727. It's a nice round number.
Hmm.
So we can say 727 is where 90 degrees is. And if we settle above it, and settle above it meaning perhaps waiting for the monthly to settle above it might be a few months. But
Right.
let's just say even on the daily basis, you know, we can get above it, hold above it. Let's say we put up some kind of a base. And then we can probably expect it to, you know, get up into 900. There's no question,
Yep.
right? And especially if we do it in the next couple of months, because that would mean it completely invalidates the square. And
Exactly.
and
Hmm.
and what happens normally is the breakout is very strong. Okay.
And it means there's an even bigger cycle at play.
That's right. And that's why,
Hmm.
you know, and we can just kind of conservatively say 900 would be the place that it's going to end up in.
Hmm.
That's if we can settle above 727 and base it and start moving. If it doesn't, well, then we know the square is a very good chance the square has some teeth and traction, and that's what's happening. And we could expect it to, you know, back off in at least minimum of 3 months, you know, and
Hmm.
90 days or so, but it could be more. And, you know, Ben, you were pointing out, you know, no matter, you know, there's a couple of counts in here. Either way, it looks like this is the fifth.
Yep.
And, you know, we could take the starting point back in 2012
Hmm.
as a one. You know, if you take a 1, 2, 3, 4,
And here's
and
5.
then a 5 and an A, B, C, D, and a 5. And that would be interesting to check too. You know, it
Hmm.
looks like we have an A, B, C. So that's a
Close.
little, yeah, it's a little
Hmm.
higher.
Maybe they
780.
grab that out of earnings tomorrow.
Wouldn't that be something? Oh my
Yeah.
God, that would be
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
And I noticed there's a gap in here, about a $50 gap that we had on the
Hmm.
daily. I don't know if you remember seeing that, like right there,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
right? That the gap up. So you know, I was thinking about that and see, you know, what happens if we compensate for the gap, and you know, we kind of split the gap. What happens, you know? So then
Wow.
we can move it up into about here, and if we do that,
It's just about there.
ABCD gets very close to it.
Yeah.
And on a monthly basis, with this kind of an you know, AB leg, that's not too bad. You know,
No, not at
that's not too
all.
bad. So we have that. That's another piece of the puzzle that we have. And biggest thing for me is really this, you know, being up
That
90
square.
by,
Yeah.
yeah, 135. That's just huge.
Hmm.
So let's go back and let's go. That's enough for the monthly. So you guys
Let's
know
look
that
at the
something. Pardon me?
weekly, daily would be really cool to look at
Yeah.
too.
So at this level, you know, at the largest time frame, I mean, we could look at yearly, but it wouldn't make any difference really. So at the
Hmm.
monthly level, it looks like we have, you know, price and time squaring. So let's go on to the weekly and see what
Oh
happens.
boy.
Yeah, that's right.
Same story.
Same story, different place, you know. So
Yep.
remember, the other one was 2012. We were coming off
This
that
is
low.
yeah, this is 1819, right?
Yep, this is the 2018 low. Coming off of that, I mean, these aren't like I wasn't looking for plays. I just went for the low. You know, there isn't,
Right.
and that's why when we were talking before the show, you know, talking about recording, and you said, "Hey, you know, I put my square at the same place," and then we
Yep.
both laughed because,
I yeah, you and I had without talking to each other, we put it in the same spot.
and that's because, I mean, if you look at between 2017 and 20, how many places do you have to place a square? You have like two, and they're both pretty much the same
Right.
level, right? And out of that,
Right.
this is the lower low.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I mean, I'm just emphasizing that to say like this square up here is not it's just purely, it's there. It's just happened to be timing. We didn't go looking for is my point, I guess,
Hmm.
you know? And so if you look at it from 2018 low, you know, we are 270 weeks out by 180 degrees. We're squaring out that.
Another good square.
Another really good square. Well, that's a big deal. To me, those two would be enough. You know, I would be like, okay, well, that's definitely a square.
And
And the
look at the
monthly,
final move, Barry. Look at the final move where it started. The back checking of the 90.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Perfect, right?
Yeah, exactly what we talk about. So we
Hmm.
know the price portion of the square is very good. Yeah, everything's lined up on this. It's good. It's so we have this big square on a weekly level. So what does it mean? And if you guys are new to our analysis, check the weekly shows that we do, and we talk a lot about how to read these charts. And like Ben pointed out, this how we came back to check the 90-degree level and what that means, and why that's a tradable pullback, and how we look at breakouts of these levels, and all of these things.
Sure.
That being said, on a weekly basis, I mean, really the square level here is, we talked about that 727 on
On the monthly.
holding above that on a monthly basis. So on a weekly basis, really the square is up in 756. So the key here is, it's really the 756 is probably the real number. Monthly
Hmm.
can have a little bit of space in there, because just because of the time spiraling, it eats into time.
It's surely in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah, well,
720,
the timeline
730 to
curves a little bit. That
750.
compensates for that's why it's a little
Yeah.
bit off.
Yeah.
And here, you can see the gap is, very small.
Very small.
And so I would go with, say, 757. We have to settle
Hmm.
above that. And if
Hmm.
we can do that, then we open up, the bigger square. Weekly basis, we're getting up into the 900s, and the full square will be up at 1120. Not that
Hmm.
we can't go there. We're just saying this is the marker to measure how that's going to move. And 757 is the key. If we can somehow, like tomorrow, we jump up and settle on top of that, and we start consolidating up here, just like we did here,
Hmm.
just like we broke above, came back, consolidate. So once it starts operating above the level, then we know it's highly probable that we move in that direction, because
You know what's
these
crazy,
lines act like
Barry?
support.
You know what's crazy? This thing could pull back to 500 and still be super bullish.
Yeah, well, this is the main line. Like 50% will be right at the 395.
400, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just seeing if it settled, on top of that little structure, that little consolidation before it took off. But
Mm-hmm.
it could, like you said, it could pull back to the 90 and still be bullish.
Very much so, because I mean, what Gann talked about was 50% pullbacks are the place to buy,
Hmm.
in bull markets, right? So that would be roughly a 50% pullback.
Yep.
And that would be, and here we have that without even having to measure anything, just because the square just fits perfectly.
That's great. Great chart.
Yeah, it's very good. And I think, clearly we're going to be watching it. And if it's to the downside, so here's the thing, we looked at the monthly, squaring out up here,
Hmm.
and then we looked at the weekly. Of course, we have a square there. So as we move on, and we get down to the daily, what I'm trying to say is, sure, we can always watch the upside because we know the level. Well, to the downside, we have it's the same level, long as we're below that, and the counter trends come in, um, below that level. We can sell it. That's how it works. We
Yep.
can sell against that resistance. Now, not that every counter trend is going to get up into 557, but that's like the cutoff. And
Hmm.
any kind of a counter trend then that runs up and reverses, depending on how you trade. Well, kind of like up here, you can see how we put in the first high, and
Hmm.
this, I think, squared out. I think going up into here, it was more of a 72.
That's what it looks like.
And those are the two sort of the main squares that we use. And, we get
Yep.
up to 72. And you can see after that, here's the first counter trend. We came down for 2 weeks, up 1, 2. When that low of that high bar got taken out, that we gave a nice short right there.
Hmm.
And the second counter trend came up
And
with
another
one
nice one.
and another, that was a really good one. And we got into 50%, consolidate here, of course. And that was like a fourth, right? The fourth wave
Hmm.
kind of consolidation. And once that broke through, that was the final washout for that move,
Hmm.
and back on up. We got above that 50%. Now we know we're done with the downside.
Downside. Yep.
And like we always talk about, we don't have to catch that. There's plenty to trade to the upside,
Hmm.
if you didn't catch the knife. So we'll stay with the 90, because that 90 basically took over, and that's what's happening. And let's move on to the daily. So daily, again, we have we have good support. We have good resistance. We went up.
Hmm.
I mean, 270 should have been the main level, right?
Yep.
And we moved through it with ease. We actually gapped right through it.
Hmm. Which is
So
also a sign of a fifth wave, right? When we start gapping.
gapping right into it and into that high, right? And we'll
Hmm.
talk about why that's important. So we got above 270 and we're pretty close to 360. You know, we're 360 by
Very close to 360. Yep.
315. Yeah, 315 up by 360. Pretty close, pretty close. And even if we mess around for another 5 days and get there, so 360 technically would be, February 28th.
Right.
And that would just be,
A week.
one more bar,
Hmm.
on the weekly. It wouldn't make any difference. On the monthly, it wouldn't make any difference. But it looks like we did run up into that pretty well. You want to look at this run, that's kind of a blow off kind of a move where we gap into that high. And so I think it's pretty much done. So again, we have 315 by pretty close to 360. I think it's pretty good. So we have that squaring out, and again, every level is hitting resistance. So basis daily, you can see how as we come down into the daily, we're hitting the
The
level
half square.
perfect. Yeah, I mean, and we're hitting the level like really right on, right? We're not even
Mhm.
near it. We're smack perfectly hitting it, and
Mhm.
that's around 742. So that's that. And what's the deal here? Well, it's squaring out again, price and time balancing.
Mhm.
Now, I think all of the sort of secret sauce is in the calendar day chart, because here we also square out. I mean, look at the,
Wow, look at that.
and this is not a sort of a common square. I mean, we're still up 315,
Right.
but in time, we did 450 plus
Plus a half.
45, that's 495. So 315 by 495. Now, that's not a common square. Like you wouldn't read that in the books, but we
Nope.
know if you're counting out the squares, this is very important. We came 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, five
And a
and a
half.
half by three and a
Mhm.
half, right? So
Mhm.
it's a kind of odd square. And sometimes, these front running sort of stocks end up in really odd squares, and that's how they square out on a daily basis. So I wouldn't ignore that. But even with that, I always look for, like, did we actually have a blow off? And the giveaway here is if you look at how price moved, right? So here's the 90. I mean, here's how, we talk about structure. Here's the 90, came up to the 90. And, we'd always talk about just because it hit the level doesn't mean it's something's going to happen. We want to look at the price action. We want to look at the structure. And what happened here, right? We had the little ascending triangle.
Mhm.
Okay. And where did it happen? Exactly at the 90.
Yep.
And once we hit it, you see, we didn't sell off, and we really didn't have price. Price and time was right there. We had a chance to sort of get
Sell
it
off.
done,
Yep.
sell off. We didn't. You can see how we held that 3 7/8 line and moved higher, broke to the upside of the triangle, check back, 3 day,
That's your big gap you were talking about too.
3 day counter trend, and boom, took off. And where did it go? Held right above the 50% again, and that's
And then
very
and then
bullish.
look where that big consolidation is.
Yeah, yeah. So
180.
yeah, this all happened right under 180. It didn't really, little volatility, fine. But eventually, the key here is we didn't get down to the 50% level.
Mm-mm.
We were always up above, right? So like 5/8. And so that's bullish. And then we had the false break here, and that was a giveaway. Ran back up, came back to checks out okay. So here's the place I wanted to get to. All that talk was to get to this.
Right.
And what happened there was, we broke out, came back. We did have price and time, 450 by 180, right?
Hmm.
And boy, if that didn't ignite the thing, fire, and from
Lift
there,
off.
we just straight up 45 days,
Hmm.
and 45 is sort of the blow off move. And if you go there, if you move the square up to that, I mean, there it is, we got there. And the
Yep.
reason we're down today is because we already squared out. I mean, look at that.
Yep.
So all
Thing
that
of
to say,
geometric beauty.
it's a beauty. It really is. And it's
Yeah.
probably because of all the volume and the focus, all the emotional,
Emotion. Yeah.
yeah, it's in there. And so all that talk was to really bring you guys to the sort of the climax, which is this squaring out in his calendar day chart. So it's beautiful. I think it's a really good example of how this Gann stuff works and how easy it is to analyze something once you have your chart and your square overlay.
And Barry, doesn't it really give you a nice peace of mind? Because you look at the chart and you say, like you said, within minutes, you can say,
Mhm.
this is not for me or this is for me based on the risk reward there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or how can I make money from this?
right.
Right.
Different people have different like risk
Uh,
tolerance, right? Some
mhm.
people look at, but you can at least with the framework of the squares on it, you can make that assessment.
Absolutely. And do it
And
rather elegantly. There's no
yeah,
mishmash. It's very
no,
clear how it all
no.
works. So anyway, so all that to say, we know we did have what looks like a good old fashioned blow off move, and it was constrained perfectly within price and time. So I would have to say we topped out here, and so that's that. And we'll see how the counter trends work out. So we had the first breakdown. So tomorrow and next coming days, we'll have to see what that next counter trend looks like. And if you guys are wondering what we're talking about, counter trends here, let me, pull up the high in, 2021 high. Let's say there's a high on November 22nd. We came down one day and then one day counter trend. Then we had an inside day, one day up. So that's the counter trend, right? If you look at the lower time frames, we have A, B, C up.
Hmm.
And once we take out the low of the high bar, that's where you want it. Gann normally love to do it here. This is where Gann angles should hit. The whole point of Gann angles is you want to try to catch that right there.
Hmm.
And we're not putting a whole bunch of Gann angles because we kind of know where those lines fall. We can eyeball it. Otherwise, the whole chart's going to be covered with lines and people go crazy.
Right.
So,
Right.
like most people, when they say Gann chart, it's just a bunch of lines. Like, how can you miss anything? It's like it's lines everywhere.
Right.
But anyway, so that's the counter trend we're talking about. I mean, even in this counter trend, I mean, these are all counter trends. If that was a high, and that's what we're talking about. So once we have, if this really is a blow off high and that high is in place, and we saw there's definitely evidence on every time frame, really. We would want to see a lower high come in, and that's where you'd want to short this thing, or definitely, if you were long along this line, I'd be very careful. So,
Yeah.
well, now what's the flip side? Flip side is we get settle on top, just like we looked at the monthly, that 727 number, right? So here, this will be the number to really work with because daily is the most accurate in terms of price and time because it's much tighter.
Hmm.
So here I would say 744. So watch 744. If we get on top of that, then the square just got invalidated. It got blown out. It can happen.
Yep.
But I doubt it will happen this time because probabilities are so low
Yeah.
of a market blowing out monthly, weekly, daily, squares all around, especially a couple of daily squares. It's too many price and time, points in the same area to just get blown out. But I'll tell you what, though, if we do get blown out,
It's
the
gonna
level,
go, man.
it's going to go, right? So,
Yeah.
the level is 744. If we somehow settle above that, take that 744 to, 765 range. If we settle above here, then clearly, I mean, the next we're going to be there, a couple of days, we should be up at 836. And again, if we take out 836, then we're up at that 900 level that we saw
Hmm.
in the monthly
Bigger
or
picture.
bigger
Yeah.
picture stuff, right? So that lines up, right around. I think the weekly came up on 930 something. So daily comes up
Hmm.
at 925. So all of that stacks up. So that's the upside. Now, it's 744 is really the key to watch. Why? Because that's where we squared out. And if that holds and we do get the beautiful counter trend in here, there's a very low risk place to sell this. You don't have to jump in here in front of earnings and, just kind of flip a coin and, join the bloodbath, right?
All right.
You can just wait for the right timing and let the market, bring you to the lowest risk point. within the counter trend, and there's your place. And now you know the levels, and you basically have the patterns.
Just
Anything you
get
want
your
to add?
popcorn now and watch it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's see how they're set up.
I was going to say the key thing we wanted to show you is how you can use these squares on individual stocks, and how it helps you frame price action. And we joke about Nvidia, but Nvidia is important because it has been the poster child for this rally. It is the king, the leader. And if you see the leader squaring out like this, it makes you kind of step back and say, okay, maybe I got to tighten up stops on longs I have, or maybe I got to look at, lightening up a little bit, taking some profits. And that's the essence of managing your money and managing your trades, right? Is just
Mhm.
being able to get a decent assessment of, what's the risk reward at this spot. I mean,
Exactly.
it would be classic tomorrow if they report blowout earnings, it goes up and then it craters.
Thanks. Yeah, yeah.
That would be classic.
Hmm.
And if you have this sort of background in your mind where you've done the work and you look at it, you won't be shocked at all. You won't be one of those people saying, "Why did it go down? The earnings were great. This is
Hmm.
bullshit. The market's rigged. This doesn't make any sense." You'll say, "I get it. I
Yeah.
understand why."
Hmm.
The
And
square, the
and the
square held.
more importantly, you know your levels. You know where the breakout level is. It's really 144. It's not because it's a high here. It's because that's 135 degrees up, and that's where it's squared out. So if you use Gann theory, you want it to break here. I mean, we're not talking about in here in
Mm-mm.
between the square. I mean, they all have different meanings, but we're not looking at a minor level. We're looking at a very important level where price and time was there. So that's why
Correct.
it's important. Yeah.
Well, listen, we hope you enjoyed this single stock trial that we did. We're going to try and do at least one of these a week. Um, but please give us your feedback. Tell us whether you like it, ring the bell, subscribe, do all those sort of things so that we know that this is the type of content that you want, and we'll keep producing it. But great job, Barry. It was I'm glad we picked this stock, and who knew it was going to have all these squares all over the place when you and I were discussing it last night.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And
No,
it's you that picked the stock. We had a choice of several stocks, and you said, well, let's go with this. And
I just thought because of all the interest in it, and as you
yeah.
said, the interest creates the emotion, creates the activity,
Hmm.
and then the chart becomes really harmonic, and so it worked out really well.
Yeah, it's very
So
good. Yeah, it's really
great job
good.
on the analysis. Hope everybody enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you soon. We'll do another one of these at some point in the near future. If not, the next time we talk to you will be the weekly report the coming week.
All right.
Take
Thanks,
care,
Ben.
everybody.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
All right,
Ciao.
bye.